A group of heroes is headed into the dark forest on a mission to liberate their home. They all wield powerful weapons known as regalia, weapons that grant them power far greater than what any human is capable of, so they are fully prepared to defeat the dark beasts in the forest. However, the second they arrive, their driver gets yeeted into oblivion by one of the dark beasts. Everyone else springs into action, and their leader, Stefan, orders everyone to get in formation as they make a charge straight into the dark beast den. The cutlass user begins slicing up all the monsters in his path with his whirlwind technique, and Stefan uses his blade to slice the heads off a giant snake monsters he was fighting. However, even with its head severed, the snake keeps trying to bite Stefan, but at the last second, Alicia is able to stop it by piercing its eye with her sword to finish it off. So far, the team has been doing pretty well, and now that all the weak monsters in the area have been dealt with, the team ventures deeper into the cave to track down the Beast Lord of the South. They eventually arrive at the center of the cave and come face to face with Clevatess, but the moonlight. And you know it's going to be bad when the monster has an ore farming entrance. Everyone can feel the intensity coming from the beast, but Stefan is confident that he and his team can overcome anything with the power of friendship. Never mind, friendship isn't going to save them here. After seeing Clevatess paint the wall with Stefan's blood, I'd be questioning whether being a hero was even worth it. But the tank seems to think he can do better, so he jumps into the air to attack it, but he is almost immediately beheaded in midair. The others are finally starting to realize that they don't stand a chance in direct battle, but it's too late for them to retreat or regroup because Clevatess has begun picking them off one by one with its tail. The others are confused because they can't figure out how Clevatess is getting to them so quickly, but Alicia realizes that the tail attacks are coming from their shadows, so she tells everyone to jump to create some distance from the shadow. Thanks to her quick thinking, she manages to parry the beast's attack and survive, but the others aren't so lucky. One of the surviving heroes jams his spear into the ground to summon an earth golem. The unit ground here is under the control of Clevatess, so the hero can't continue his golem, and several tail spikes emerge from the ground and slice him up. The lance user tries to charge forward and overpower Clevatess, but while the dude is fighting for his life over here, Clevatess is casually wondering how things as weak as humans manage to get into his lair. He finishes off the rest of the heroes to the only one left alive is Alice, who has been flying around with her sword to avoid getting hit. She eventually manages to get close enough to Clevatess's face to land a good hit on him, but Eurostrona's attack barely leaves a scratch on Clevatess. Meanwhile, Clevatess is still deep in thought because he can't fathom the stupidity that led humans to attack his land when he hasn't had beef with them for over 1,000 years. But if they are going to keep bothering him like this, then he's going to need to come up with a more permanent solution. But first he has to deal with Alice, so he slashes her limbs off and sends her falling to her doom. A little while later, Clevatess crash lands in the human kingdom, and he's hewed with vengeance on his mind. He was perfectly fine leaving the human kingdom alone as long as they had minded their business, but they just had to go trying to conquer his land. From what the heroes said before the fight, they were sent to fight by the king of Haida, so he's going to need to have a word with him about this. The kingdom's archers are alerted to the threat, so they show up and take aim at Clevatess. But unsurprisingly, those arrows do absolutely no damage. But despite the clear power difference, they continue attacking like it's going to do something. Clevatess is just here for the king, so he was initially going to ignore all the other humans, but since they are attacking him now, he slaughters them all on his way to the castle. The castle guards begin prepping the rest of the defenses and aim their catapults at Clevatess, but their weapons still have no effect on him, so Clevatess rips through the castle walls with ease. Inside the castle, one of the guards goes to warn the king of Clevatess's attack, but the king already heard all the crashing sounds, so he pretty much knows what happened. The heroes, he said, must have failed to kill Clevatess because the weapons of Haydn weren't strong enough yet. He realizes that Clevatess is most likely here for him, so there would be no point in fleeing now because Clevatess would just hunt him down. However, even if he is going to end up dying, a king wants to seal off the forge so the flames of Haydn are never extinguished. Meanwhile, Clevatess is outside, and he is wondering why the humans here are so pitiful compared to the heroes that attacked him. At first, he thought it might have been some kind of special training, but after the castle's guards fire Haydn metal ballists at him, he realizes that their strength was in their weapons. Thinking back, even though it didn't do much damage, the sword which he used to slash his horn actually left a mark which shouldn't have been possible. Even if humans are nothing more than insects to him, an insect with a stinger can still be dangerous, so Clevatess plans to get to the bottom of this. At the same time, down in the depths of the castle, the king goes to check on the forger Haydn, but suddenly the walls around him begin to shake, so he realizes Clevatess must be nearby and hurriedly seals the forge off. Moments later, Clevatess rips the roof off the castle, and as soon as he spots the king, he calls him out. The king tries to act unfazed and tells Clevatess, and he has no right to speak to him like that. But Clevatess tells the king to watch his tone because if he wanted to, he could wipe out all the humans in an instant. And not just the people of Haydn either, he could go after the people of the neighboring kingdoms as well. He could have killed the king by now. But even if he did that, another king would eventually pop up and disturb Clevatess's land again. So he is giving the king of Haydn one chance to explain himself. He wants to know why he ordered those heroes to attack him. But instead of actually explaining the reason, the king practically spits in Clevatess's face, saying a beast like him could never understand human ambition. Clevatess has heard all he needs to hear, so he slices the king's head off and begins making plans to wipe all humans from the face of the earth. However, as he is walking out of the destroyed city, he comes across a baby crying after its mother had been crushed under some falling debris. Clevatess feels no sympathy for it whatsoever, so he decides to keep walking. But then the baby's mother calls out to him and asks Clevatess to save her baby. Clevatess is a bit stunned by the mother's bold request, so he reminds her that he was the one who brought Rue into this kingdom, and he has even decided to wipe out all humans, so why would he want to save his human child? The mother understands his point, but regardless of what the adults may have done to deserve Clevatess's wrath, she insists that the baby has done nothing to deserve such a fate. Clevatess doesn't see the point in arguing about the baby's innocence since all humans are the same to him, but he's willing to play alone, so he asks the mother if she can prove the baby's worth to him. The mother knows she won't be able to prove anything to Clevatess, especially since she's going to die soon, but she swears that if Clevatess agrees to save the baby, he will eventually discover its worth on his own. The mother dies shortly after and Clevatess walks off completely unfazed, but he does end up coming back for the baby, so the mother's speech must have gotten through to him. He still isn't entirely sure if it's a good idea to take this baby, but compared to his long lifespan, his human child's life is barely noticeable, so he's willing to look after it for the sake of curiosity. In the land of Ethia, there are 5 humanoid races, the first of which are the Duns, a kingdom of people with large numbers and great skill in architecture. The next are the Orgites, a kingdom of people who excel in hunting and medicine. The Slatans, aquatic people skilled in swimming and fishing. The Benti, barbaric people who are strong individually, but couldn't work together even if their lives depended on it. And finally, it is the kingdom of Haydn, or rather, it was the kingdom of Haydn because it's gone now. They were the oldest of the humanoid races and had great skill when it came to forging weapons, which is how the blades of Haydn were made. There is a lot more to the world than just Epia, but beyond the continent's borders, it is surrounded by darkness on all sides. This darkness is where the dark beasts live and the 4 dark beast lords, one of which is Clevatess, so humans have never set foot outside Ethia. Back at Clevatess's cave, he brought the baby back with him, and after scaring all the beasts to make sure none of them eat him, he curls up next to the child to rest, but now he's not sure what to do with him. He can give him some of his energy to keep him strength up so he doesn't have to worry about dying anytime soon, but the baby is currently covered in poop. Clevatess did not sign up to deal with this, so he picks the baby up and drops him into a pit of spiders without a second thought. The baby immediately starts crying, and I probably would too if I was surrounded by spiders, but Clevatess assures him that he's safe. The spiders in that pit will make him puke, so he dropped him in there to get cleaned up, but that doesn't make it any less scary. Even after he pulls him back up, he won't stop crying, and Clevatess is starting to get sick of all the constant wailing. But as a dark beast lord, he can't go back on his decision, so he's going to have to see this through to the end. But to make sure the baby survives, he's going to need a human to look after it, so he walks over to the heroes he killed to see if any of them can be useful. Moments later, Alicia wakes up and finds herself staring at the sky, but she clearly remembers getting killed, so she wonders if this is the afterlife. However, once she sees Clevatess, she realizes she's still in his cave. She instinctively reaches for her sword, but Clevatess tells her he already threw all the weapons below the bodies of her allies down into the ravine. However, she looked like she'd be useful, so he decided to revive her. Right now, Alicia is basically a walking corpse, and the only reason she can move is because of the dark energy that he imbued her with, but that's enough explaining for now, so he tells Alicia to make herself useful and give him some milk. It takes a moment for her to register what Clevatess just asked her to do, but he isn't joking. And this isn't a request either because you really need that milk, so he uses his powers to force Alicia to comply. However, after several minutes of suckling, Clevatess finally realizes this isn't working. Alicia tells him it obviously wouldn't work because she's never had a baby before and she doesn't understand why someone like Clevatess would even want to keep a baby alive in the first place. Clevatess doesn't intend to explain his reasons to her, but since Alicia can't provide milk, he is going to need her to be useful in other ways. The baby won't die as long as Clevatess keeps giving it energy, but it will be perpetually hungry, so he asks Alicia if there's any other way to get milk. Alicia can't disobey Clevatess's commands if she tells him that you will need to hire a nursing mother to feed the baby, but to do that he would have to go to his human town, and with his current form he's guaranteed to cause a panic, so he decides to take a human form so he can boy him in. He doesn't have much to go off, so he decides to take the form of the baby's mother and says he will be called Kren, while the baby's name will be Luna. Kren tells Alicia to lead the way to the nearest village, but before that they need to stop so Alicia can wash Luna's blanket, but while she's washing it, she realizes the blanket has the Haydn royal crest on it. Meanwhile, back in what's left of Haydn, the news of what happened has spread, so a scout was sent to inspect the damage. He can't believe that a single dark beast was able to cause all this destruction, but this is exactly why he thought it would be too reckless to attack one of the Beast Lords. And the timing could have been worse because the day of the attack was the day the crowned princess was supposed to flee the kingdom with her son. Back by the river, Alicia confronts Kren and asks if he knew that Luna was from the royal family when he took the baby. Kren has no idea what she's talking about, so Alicia points out that the cloth Luna was wrapped to have the royal emblem on it and only members of the royal family can use it. Now that Kren thinks about it, the wound he got Luna from was crushed under the rubble of the castle, so it makes sense that Luna would be a member of the royal family. But that doesn't really change Kren's plans. Alicia asks what she means by rubble of the castle, so Kren boldly tells her that he destroyed Haydn and killed the king last night. Alicia can't believe Haydn was really destroyed, but Kren reminds her that they were the ones who attacked him first. Kren doesn't think it's a big deal, but Alicia says it's a really big deal because if Kren really wiped out Haydn and Luna must be the last member of the royal family, and that means tons of people are going to be coming after him. Kren asks why, so Alicia explains that only members of the Haydn royal family are able to use the special forging techniques used to make the Haydn weapons. But immediately after she says that, she realizes she gave away too much information. Kren hadn't given much thought to what he wants to do with Luna till now. But if he's really that important, then Kren wouldn't mind making him the new king of the humans. That way, Kren would be able to control everything from behind the scenes and crush the humans once and for all if they step too far out of line. Though right now, they still need to get some milk for Luna, so he tells Alicia to get moving. Alicia still doesn't know why Kren is so attached to Luna that she is certain that if anything were to happen to him, he would probably kill every last human on the continent, so Alicia needs to protect him at all costs.
They're suddenly attacked by bandits and one of them hits Clevatess, so she thinks he'll destroy them, but he starts bleeding and falls to the ground. She can't believe what's happening, but they knock her out as well. And as she wakes up, she realizes that they've been captured by the bandits. She wonders why Clevatess looks so calm, and he mentions that he's glad Luna is safe, but she asks him why he was down with just a single blow. She wonders if he's gotten weaker because he transformed into a human. So he tells her he hasn't lost his powers, but he's surprised by how fragile his body is. He tells her to explain the situation. So she mentions that they've been captured by bandits who are most likely taking them to a slave trader. She inquires why they aren't simply escaping. He replies that he won't reveal his true self until he makes Runa king, expressing his desire to witness the darker aspects of humanity. He then asks her about the strength of the bandits. She explains that while they may not be very strong, they are willing to resort to underhanded tactics to secure a victory. After some time, the bandits order everyone to disembark from the carriage, but one individual attempts to flee. They swiftly eliminate him with a throwing knife and issue a warning that anyone else who tries to escape will face death. Suddenly, two of the bandits grab Alicia and take her away, while a woman named Karm observes Clevatess holding a baby. She instructs a girl named Nell to look after him. Meanwhile, the bandits introduce Alicia to a man named Vroko, who insists they refer to him as their boss since the previous leader is no longer around, but they do not acknowledge him as such. He then threatens them with his dark beast, which he reveals he has been keeping as a pet. He inquires about the Arcanasite she retrieved from Luna Mountain, aware that 13 heroes attempted to defeat Clevatess, but ultimately failed. Suddenly, he seizes her, remarking on her oddly calm demeanor given the circumstances. This leads him to question whether she might be one of the heroes, yet she stays silent. He informs her that Clevatess has attacked the capital and laid waste to the castle. For the bandits, this turn of events couldn't have been more advantageous. He draws his blade and she gasps at its unusual color. He explains that it is crafted from a steel that only the royal family can forge. He then admits that his weapon is a replica, but people are too foolish to discern the truth. Consequently, they profit easily by selling these fakes. He clarifies that with the royal family gone, he can sell his counterfeit weapons at a higher price. However, if he manages to acquire a regalia, he stands to earn a significant amount since they are no longer being produced. He points out that the simplest way to obtain a regalia is from a deceased hero, but they are typically taken out by the dark beasts lurking in their territories, making it nearly impossible to retrieve them. He inquires about the whereabouts of the regalia belonging to all the heroes, but she remains tight-lipped. Consequently, he instructs the bandits to ensure she guides them to the weapons. He permits them to exhaust her to the extent that she will comply with their orders. They express their satisfaction with this plan, saying he isn't so bad after all. Meanwhile, we see Clevatess working at a bar while Nell is beside him feeding Luna, but the patrons are demanding more drinks from her. He begins to serve everyone, and they believe he's a remarkable find since he does everything without a hint of complaint. However, Carm senses something off about him. At that moment, two men stumble, causing her to spill the drinks. They drag her outside and punish her, warning her not to drop their drinks again. But as they attempt to leave, they suddenly feel unwell and Clevatess takes them out. He instructs her to feed Luna and expresses his desire to learn more about her. She discloses that she has been with the bandits since birth. She shares that she never met her father, and although her mother was present, she only glimpsed her from the shadows, suffering at the hands of the bandits. Her mother vanished when Nell turned 12. After that, the bandits began to abuse her, making her realize that her mother had been trying to protect her. They treated her like an animal. However, things improved when Carm came along and taught her how to handle men. Clevatess understands that only a woman who has given birth can produce milk, so he inquires about Nell's child, but she sadly informs him that it passed away before birth. She experienced a moment when everything around her turned dark and she longed for death so she could reunite with her child in the afterlife. However, upon waking, she discovered a baby nursing from her, which inspired her to live on for its survival. Subsequently, two more of her children died, and she shares that her will to live is fueled by the presence of babies who still require her milk. Clevatess expresses gratitude for her story and requests that she become Luna's wet nurse, admitting that despite his disdain for humans, he sees no reason to turn her away. Yet she declines his proposal, pointing out that he is powerless as a slave. She also mentions her need to remain there to care for the babies that will arrive in the future. Meanwhile, as the two bandits drag Alicia across a river, she comes to the realization that they are in a location known as the Shaft of Elba, a place referenced in the legend of a hero named Cordwar. She watches a slave leap into the water, hoping the bandits will honor their promise to him, but he is torn apart by the dark creatures known as the Arvensis. She reflects on how these beasts arrived with the floods 300 years ago, and how Cordwar, the mightiest hero of his time, was unable to defeat them. His weapon, called the Stream Splitter, was famous for splitting a waterfall in front of the King of Haydn, and she realizes that this is what the bandits are after. They inquire if her weapon has a name too, but she declines to share any information. They then remind her of her precarious situation, telling her that their friends are eager to make her scream, and one of them steps forward, threatening to tear her clothes off. However, she manages to dislocate her shoulder to escape the cuffs and uses his knife to sever the bridge, ripping off his ears in the process. As she plummets, she hopes that Clevatess was truthful when he said she couldn't die. She crashes to the ground while the bandits speculate whether she is dead. They can't believe what just happened and they go down to check on her because if Rocco finds out she died, there's no telling what he'll do to them. She opens her eyes and realizes that she's still alive, but she can't move because her body has been destroyed. A small version of Clevatess appears and she wonders why he's that tiny, so he mentions that it depends on the amount of dark ichor. He assures her that any part of her body that isn't completely destroyed will be restored when he puts his dark ichor in her body, and she wonders why he isn't doing it yet. So he notes that he needs to ask her a question first. He tells her he found a wet nurse for Luna, and seeing how badly she was treated by the bandits, he thought she would quickly accept his offer to hire her, but he doesn't understand why she rejected him. So Alicia tells him it's because he's a slave. She notes that the bandits never let a person go, and Nell knows that they'll hunt her down if she escapes. Alicia advises him to crush the bandits if he wants to save Nell. She is aware that he has the ability to do it easily, but he explains that he can't reveal his true self because he doesn't want anyone to find out that he left Luna Mountain. He suggests that she take care of the bandits herself, and as he restores her body, she screams in agony, leaving the bandits stunned by the scene. They plan to capture her alive so she can guide them to the regalia, and one of them attempts to slice her arm, but she remains unfazed and punches him away. Meanwhile, Carm inquires why Nell took so long to come back. Nell replies that she was feeding Luna. Carm expresses concern that the bandits may have hurt her too much, reminding her to follow the instructions she taught her before they overheard her. Carm then tells her to tidy up the kitchen, and she wonders why Nell seems so cheerful despite returning the black eye. She inquires of Carm about the world beyond, noting that she has nothing to share since her memories of it are not pleasant. She ponders why Nell is curious about it, recalling how a slave once asked her to accompany him, which angers Carm. In her frustration, she slaps Nell, unable to comprehend how Nell could be pleased that she was invited to leave without her. Just as she is about to strike again, Vroko appears, reminding them that it's not right for friends to quarrel. He mentions he came because he heard they had something special, prompting Carm to realize he means Luna, and Nell adds that he's in the barn. Vroko then prepares to depart, inviting her to join him, but Carm feels irritated as she is the only one responsible for feeding the babies. She has no clue what they'll do in her absence. Clevatess shows up behind Carm and points out that they lack someone to feed Luna. He then asks her to fill him in on everything. Meanwhile, Vroko leads Nell to an unfamiliar tunnel, and she feels frightened when she spots a skull, but he reassures her that it's merely rat bones. Suddenly, the lamp goes out, and when he turns it back on, she's startled to find his dark beasts looming behind her. He discloses that he has been studying how to control dark beasts and warns her that she will face execution for contemplating a venture into the outside world. He commands the beast to devour her, prompting her to flee while regretting not accepting Clevatess's offer. The beast consumes her, but just then, Clevatess arrives, believing that in this world, it's normal to eat and be eaten. However, he is puzzled as to why a dark beast is under human control. Vroko instructs the beast to also eat Clevatess and Luna, but it panics upon seeing him and unexpectedly spits Nell back out. He realizes she is still alive, albeit in a dire condition. He neutralizes the stomach acid that has coated her and places Luna next to her. He tells Luna to comfort her until her final moments, as only he can do it since he is a baby, and Clavis carries them to safety with his tail. Vroko suspects he is a magic user, and he is unaware of what that truly means. He then produces a special powder made from crushed larvae of a parasitic fly. He explains that this powder incapacitates the host's ability to think, enabling him to exert control over them, and notes that currently it can only be used to dominate a female troll. He makes the beast inhale the powder, which reestablishes his control, and it strikes Clevatess, causing him to bleed. We shift back to Alicia, who begins to take down the bandits, but fatigue sets in as they continue to swarm her. We go back to when she was a kid, and she hits a rock with her sword, which hurts her hands. She wonders how she can get stronger, so her father advises her not to hesitate because it slows down her movements. Back in the present, one of the bandits destroys her sword and smashes her to the ground, but she immediately gets back up. She knows that she needs a stronger weapon to defeat the bandits, so she runs away from them and thinks about how even though she can't die, she's still getting tired. She thinks the dark ichor is making her stamina drain faster, and she's worried about being caught because she knows she won't die no matter what horrible things they do to her. She plans to get the legendary sword from the water, but she sees the dark beasts waiting for her to jump in, and the bandits keep following her. So she breaks the scaffolding, which makes them fall into the water, and the beasts start to feed on them. So she uses the chance to jump in while hiding in a barrel, and she knows that all she needs to do is endure the pain until she gets to the bottom of the lake because she won't die even if she suffocates. She manages to reach the bottom of the lake, but her body starts to go numb since she's out of air. She notices the regalia, so she forces herself to go towards it, but she suddenly sees an eye. And as the ground starts to shake, she realizes that she's on top of a giant dark beast. She tries to get the sword because she knows that it will increase her strength, but the dark beast suddenly swallows her. She remembers how her father told her that even though she doesn't have the same strength as other men, she can draw out the power of a sword better than anyone. So he has no doubt that she'll make a great hero. The dark beast is about to eat her. But even though most of her body is in its mouth, she still manages to grab the sword and break free. She realizes that it's an ancient one, which is a dark beast that has been alive for thousands of years, but it sleeps for ages and rarely shows itself. As she attempts to escape, she notices that the Arvensis are also attacking her, but she manages to slip past them and reach the surface. The ancient creature continues to pursue her, causing the bandits to panic at the sight of it as it begins to wreak havoc all around. Alicia severs its tentacles as she realizes she can't confront it by herself, so she chooses to flee. The bandits plead with her to save them, reminding her of her heroic status. They vow to do anything for her in return, but she responds that she is no longer a hero, explaining that she serves someone much more terrifying than the Ancient One. As she departs, the dark beasts take out all of them, and she understands that they cannot escape the water. However, with the awakening of the Ancient One, the surviving bandits will not remain there. She believes she has fulfilled her mission and wishes she could have accomplished more, but she is thankful that she at least obtained the regalia. Clevatess communicates with him telepathically, and he notices the blood surrounding her, which makes him realize that she has completed her task. She's frustrated that he didn't assist her, even though he was aware she was in danger. However, he explains that he's struggling with a problem of his own. He suspects that she has kept magical information from him and demands that she come to him so he can punish her. We find Clevatess perched on the troll's body while Vroko attempts to flee, only to collide with Luna and Nell. Alicia arrives at Clevatess, who explains that the smoke is interfering with his senses, making it difficult for him to locate Luna. He inquires about the sword, but she declines to hand it over, stating that she risked her life to obtain it. He mentions his ability to transform and wreak havoc, but the space is too confined and he fears he might harm Luna. He urges her to do something about the smoke, but she points out that she cannot use magic, as only a select few can. He calls her useless and begins searching for Luna, but she questions him about what he would do if Luna is already dead. He mentions that he might lose his interest in humanity, which leads her to understand that Luna is the sole reason he hasn't wiped out all humans. They stumble upon a blood trail, and he informs her that Nell was bleeding, indicating that someone must have dragged her. We observe Rocco carrying Luna, but Nell clutches his cape in an attempt to prevent him from escaping. He tries to kick her off because she's ruining his cape, yet she stubbornly holds on. He is resolute about taking Luna with him, as finding her made him weep and break his lamp, which in turn made Vroko realize he possesses magical abilities. Rocco draws his knife, ready to sever Nell's hands, but Alicia intervenes just in time. He questions what became of the bandits who were looking after her, and Clevatess informs him that they have been devoured by the dark beasts. Rocco cautions them to keep their distance and threatens to chop off Luna's fingers if they approach, but Clevatess remains unfazed, knowing he can heal any wound. Alicia reveals to Rocco the regalia she retrieved from the lake's depths, tossing it onto a stone and informing him that he can't retrieve it without using both hands, so he should simply set Luna down. However, he soon realizes that Luna possesses hidden royal blood as she relinquished her regalia so effortlessly, and he demands to know where the other 13 regalia are in exchange for Luna. Clevatess points out that they are merely swords, suggesting she should just disclose their location, to which she responds that they lie at the bottom of the canyon of Luna Mountain. Yet Rocco refuses to honor the agreement and uses a powder to render himself invisible, believing it will aid his escape. Nevertheless, Alicia discovers his whereabouts through Luna's cries and slices Rocco in half. She notes that they managed to save Luna thanks to Nell and instructs Clevatess to assist her. However, he mentions that he can only control one individual at a time with his dark Ecker and observes that many of her body parts are missing. So he needs to replace them from somewhere else, and he thinks she isn't worth that much effort. But Alicia reminds him that Luna is only alive thanks to Nell, and she notes that if she were Luna's mother, she would wish for a person like Nell to take care of her child. Clevatess tells her she'll need to die for a moment for him to heal Nell, but she says she doesn't care because it's her duty as a hero to save people. So Clevatess heals Nell, but she doesn't understand what's happening, and she's surprised to see that all of her teeth have come back. She wonders if he healed her, but he tells her to thank Alicia because she convinced him to save her, and after she wakes up from her death, she instantly grabs her regalia. He gives Luna to Nell and asks her to join them once again, so she gladly accepts his offer. After that, Clevatess takes Alicia's sword and hides it in his shadow because it stands out too much, telling her he doesn't want to attract attention. Nell arrives with Luna, and Alicia wonders if she's okay because she's carrying a lot of stuff. But she notes that she feels light, which makes Alicia think that Clevatess might have given her the body parts of a strong bandit. Nell offers to carry Alicia's sword and armor as well, but she mentions that she doesn't have any. So Nell tells her that Rocco kept all the good swords in his desk. She asks Clevatess if she can get one, and he gives her permission because he knows that she's useless without a sword. He asks Nell if she'll miss her home, and she notes that even though she doesn't have any good memories of it, she still lived there with her mother. So seeing it empty makes her sad. She regrets not being able to say goodbye to Carm. Then a man named Gart shows up, mentioning that he has been searching for Clevatess. In the meantime, Alicia discovers some money in the women's armor located in Rocco's desk and finds a sword that catches her interest. Suddenly, Clevatess bursts through the wall and Gart launches an attack on her, though he is taken aback by her ability to evade his kick. She defends herself with her sword, but he conjures a gust of wind that sends her flying out of the house. He informs her that his focus is solely on Clevatess and suggests she leave, but she cautions him not to underestimate her. Her sword begins to emit a glow, and she's ready to strike him down, but Clevatess intervenes, urging her to stop. He hits her to bring her back to her senses because she removed all thoughts except for killing from her head. And he tells her that if he hadn't stopped her, Gart would have torn her to pieces. Gart mentions that he received information that a small man was keeping a female troll there, and he notes that Nell stinks like a troll. So he thinks Clevatess is the man he's looking for. He orders Nell to wait at the entrance with Luna, and he mentions that Gart is a dark beast who is using incredibly strong illusion magic. He knows that the only one capable of using such magic is the Lord of the West Dark Beasts named Zavtir. So Gart is her servant. He wonders how Clevatess can know this. So he notes that he's also a dark beast who serves Clevatess. Gart shows them his true form, and he mentions that he heard how Clevatess destroyed a human capital, revealing that Zavtir also wishes to destroy the humans. He tells Clevatess to give him proof that he's a dark beast. So he reveals one of his tales to put Gart at ease, and Alicia can't believe that there are others who can transform into a human. But Clevatess tells her not to think about it too much, and he notes that there aren't a lot of dark beasts that can transform, revealing that they consider talking with humans an embarrassment. Gart wonders why he's with Alicia because she's a hero, which makes her an enemy of dark beasts. So he tells Gart he's controlling her with his spell. He mentions that his companions are just tools for him to learn more about humanity, and Gart warns him that he'll eliminate them if they get in his way, but Clevatess notes that he won't let him do that. He wonders why Zavtir is thinking about eliminating humans because she's usually interested in observing them, and the organs even consider her a god. 3 days earlier, we find Gart soaring through the sky when he spots a pair of dark creatures searching for the younglings. He notices a vial lying nearby, so he takes it to Zavtir, informing her that this is the 9th time a youngling has gone missing. Believing the humans are responsible, she advises him to investigate and eliminate them if needed. Fast forward to the present, where Clevatess informs Garth that he has dealt with Rocco and had to kill the female troll in self-defense. He shares that Karm revealed the reason women in that area don't give birth is due to mysterious robed men who come to purchase them, which is why she ended up killing all of Nell's babies. Karm elaborates that the village women avoid getting pregnant because they are aware that their babies will be taken from them, but Nell is too naive to grasp this. He observes that Nell was raised there, suggesting her mother must have hidden her until she was too old to be sold, telling Karm that they simply didn't do enough to safeguard their children, which brings her to tears. Clevatess suspects that those purchasing the children are linked to the youngling's disappearance, and he also thinks that magic plays a role in this situation. He observes that Alicia appears distressed, so he inquires if she has any insight into the matter, to which she responds that the mages could be the ones orchestrating everything. She explains that the mages appeared on the battlefield a few years back and transformed the nature of combat, as the outcome of battles now largely hinges on the strength of the mages involved. She discloses that Drell was the first to introduce mages into warfare, and he is also the one responsible for her father's death. Clevatess is curious as to why she chose to pursue him rather than the man who took her father's life. Alicia explains that it was her father's dying wish. Meanwhile, in the Estlin camp, a man named Rode instructs his troops to assemble their forces. A soldier named Mikkel informs him that their advanced unit has been defeated and that Drell and his army are moving south, indicating they are targeting Haydn. Drell's forces vastly outnumber them, but Rode thinks they can win if they take over the West Gate, but it requires cooperation from Haydn. He notes that he sent messengers to them, but they still haven't returned, and he knows that Haydn must be in chaos since it was just attacked by Clevatess. He notes that Drell and the Bolade are after the forge and Haydn because it's the only thing that can make the regalia and magic weapons, and Mikkel knows that they can't let their enemies have it. He notes that if Bolade gets hold of the forge, they can take over all of the Ethi, since they already have a powerful army. A soldier suddenly approaches them, and Rode wonders if the messengers have returned, but he reveals that the East Gate has suddenly opened. Drell meets up with Maynard, who tells him the king of Haydn is dead, but the problem is the 6-month-old son of the crown princess, because he's the only one left with royal blood. He notes that the child is missing, but he received a message from the bandits telling him they found a Haydn baby. So Drell tells him to investigate it and bring the child back. Nell makes coffee for Clevatess, but he doesn't know what it is. And as he tries to drink it, he ends up burning his tongue. She wonders where Gard is, so he mentions that he went to report his findings, and he tells her she shouldn't be afraid of him. Alicia arrives after talking with the merchants in the town, and she's learned that Bola is invading Haydn, who are trying to fight back, but they stand no chance of winning. Estlin tried to prevent Bolé from crossing the border as well, but they failed, and Clevatess wonders why they're interfering. So she notes that they've always been at war with Bolé, but they're weaker because their magic is inferior, and they're trying to stop Bolé from getting the forge since it's the only thing giving them the advantage. She mentions that the people in Haydn don't know how to use the forge and explains that they don't have any mages because the king didn't allow anyone to use magic. Nell gives Alicia a coffee as well, and Clevatess is surprised to see that she's never drank it, so she notes that it's because she lived in a village where they didn't have it. Now goes to feed Luna, and Alicia thinks she's amazing, but Clevatess tells her she can't have a child with Nell, which makes her spit out her coffee. She explains that it's not what she meant and notes that it's the first time she's ever used her sword to bring a smile to someone's face, which makes her feel like she's finally acting like a hero. She wonders what Clevatess will do because his goal is to make Luna king. But if Bolate takes over Haydn, that won't be possible anymore. She understands that Bolate will pursue Luna since the royal lineage holds the secrets to refining Arcanite, and she believes that Drell is the only one capable of commanding a whole army to accomplish that objective. In a flashback, we discover that Alicia's father had retired and lived in secrecy, yet Drell managed to find and eliminate him just to demonstrate how powerful his magic had become. He demolishes their home and claims to be an old friend of her father, but when she attempts to attack him, her father intervenes, not wanting her to become embroiled in a war. He advises that heroes should steer clear of conflict, and as he passes away, he urges her to explore the world. We return to the present where Alicia informs Clevatess that he must save Haydn if he hopes to reach his goal, and he is incredulous that he has to protect something he originally intended to destroy. As he gets ready to depart, she requests to accompany him, but he insists she stay behind as he does not want others to think he is collaborating with a human. He reminds her that her father advised her never to engage in a fight with Drell, but she replies that she no longer sees herself as a hero, so seeking revenge is acceptable. He questions her decision to become a hero, and she explains that it was to ensure she could contribute to making the world a larger place. He then tells her that she played a part in expanding Nell's world. He clarifies that he never asked her to stop being a hero, encouraging her to make her own choices, before departing for Haydn after shifting into his beast form. Alicia and the others head to the town where they witness a surviving bandit being attacked by the townspeople. She observes that Nell is still frightened of the bandits, so she reassures her not to be concerned, as no one will recognize her in her current state. The bandit notices Alicia and he tries to tell the others that she's the one who released the Ancient One, but she leaves before they get a look at her. They think he's lying because all the heroes have been eliminated. So they hang him on a tree with the other bandits they found. After that, as Alicia and Nell go to an inn, Alicia tells her to stop calling her a hero because she doesn't want people to find out her identity. As they head inside, two men named Phil and Pete stop her because they think they're bandits, but their mother, Carrie, tells them to stop before they wake up the baby. She notices that Luna is a hiding baby, so she asks them what they're doing there, and Alicia mentions that there is gourds. She doesn't care about anything as long as they spend money there. So they buy a room in her inn, and Phil still refuses to trust them, but Carrie kicks him, telling him to help them with their stuff. Nell tells them she's fine, but as Pete carries her bag, he's shocked by how heavy it is. As they enter their room, they're surprised to see iron beds there. So Carrie notes that the king gave them as gifts because her group made chairs for the castle. They get comfortable in the room, but Maynard finds their location and he tells his swarm of insects to get Luna. After a while, Nell notices that Luna has grown his first teeth, which they find cute, and Carrie tells them dinner is ready. So Alicia goes to get it, but she hears people badmouthing the heroes. One of them, named Gabe, notes that the reason the king stopped making weapons for 15 years was because no one would challenge the lords of the Dark Beast. But he doesn't understand why the kings suddenly chose 13 heroes, saying they even had a parade, and everyone thinks it's pathetic how they failed to complete their mission. Maynard suddenly crashes through the window with a massive bug. Gabe attempts to flee, but soon realizes that the bugs are all around him, tearing him apart. Maynard introduces himself as the supreme mage of Drell's army, explaining that he is there to determine if Luna possesses royal blood. Alicia tries to reach for her sword, but she left it behind in the room, and she hears Nell screaming as she is attacked by another mage named Nay. Nell is puzzled about how Nay managed to get there since they are on the second floor. She explains that she used her axe to fly. She discloses that she has the ability to attract and repel anything made of iron, and mentions that her magic is derived from a turtle in the east that has an iron shell. If it is struck with a steel sword, it adheres to its body, while the iron shell deflects any wooden weapon. She pulls out a pill and explains that if Luna has magical talent, the pill will alter his eye color, but he will perish if he cannot wield magic. Alicia runs to the room, but Maynard uses his bug to stop her, and Nell tries to break free, but Nay tells her to stop wasting her strength because she isn't strong enough to do anything. But she pushes the beds into Nay, which causes an explosion that distracts Maynard, while Alicia kicks away the bug and reaches the room where she's surprised to see that Nell made a huge hole in the wall. She thinks they should run away, but they get surrounded by the insects. So they jump out of the window as Alicia kills the bugs that get in their way. They start running to safety, while Nay throws an axe towards them, but it hits a bug and the insects suddenly stop following them. So Alicia thinks they can escape, but she sees a wall of insects around the town and she notes that they should find a place to hide where the insects can't get in because they need to protect Luna. In the end, Nay reports the situation to Maynard, who thinks they shouldn't have underestimated Alicia because she's one of the 13 heroes, which shocks everyone. He expresses his certainty about the situation because he witnessed Drell battling her father, and he believes she wouldn't be guarding an ordinary baby. He feels there's no necessity for tests to verify that Luna belongs to the royal bloodline and mentions that he's uncertain about Alicia's group's intentions, but he's eager to make them suffer. Following this, Maynard assembles everyone in the town, and they are all prepared to confront him. He admires their bravery. They inquire about the Bolate army's objectives. He clarifies that their mission is to safeguard them, explaining that they wouldn't be facing their current predicament if their king had not passed away. He reminds them of the attack by Clevatess and emphasizes that they won't be able to stop him if he strikes again. Therefore, they require Bolate's protection. They question him about why he killed one of their own if he is being truthful. He reassures them that it was an accident and states that he is there to capture Alicia. He points out that she has betrayed humanity and that he needs the bugs to apprehend her, instructing everyone to begin the hunt for her. Meanwhile, Drell army are crossing a river, but he suddenly stops and tells Rode to come out of hiding. So he jumps into the river and freezes it with his regalia while the rest of the Eslan forces rush forward, and we see that they're wearing special shoes, which gives them an advantage to fight on the ice. Drell is impressed that Rode has mastered his regalia, but he knows that he still couldn't have frozen the entire lake, which means he's using mages. He attacks Rode, but he's impressed when Rode manages to block it, and he's determined to beat Drell no matter what. He uses his sword to summon an ice snake, which freezes Drell's horse, forcing him to jump off. They begin to clash as Drell commends Rode for his strength and tactics, yet he still feels it's insufficient. Suddenly, his sword emits a red glow, and a massive claw emerges from it, sending Rode flying. Drell discloses that he has infused his regalia with magic, enhancing its power, and he employs the claw to strike at both Rode and Bolate's troops. Rode is shocked that he has attacked his own allies. He remarks that anyone lacking the strength to endure the ongoing battle does not deserve to progress beyond their realm. Rode ponders Drell's true intentions, Drell then reveals that his aim is to dismantle the tradition of heroes. He elaborates that this belief is the reason they have been battling an invincible foe. He emphasizes that people must cease their faith in the legend, as they have been attempting for millennia without success against the Four Lords, so he wants to put a stop to it. He decides to let Road go and is just about to leave. However, Clevatess suddenly shows up and nearly blows everyone away with his roar. He questions Drell about the source of the magic he wields, which catches Drell off guard since he didn't expect a lord to concern himself with such matters. Clevatess informs him that someone has been abducting younglings of both humans and dark beasts, and he heard that magic was involved, stating he must deal with those who are causing trouble in his domain. He strikes Drell with his tail, but Drell reveals that he anticipated this move because he knew Clevatess would come back. A third eye manifests on his forehead, and he casts a spell that makes his body explode, with his blood forming a sphere that traps Clevatess. Drell's body suddenly reappears, and he explains that he sacrificed his flesh to create the prison sphere, believing that even Clevatess wouldn't be able to break free from it. He then tells his men that it's time to depart. We shift back to the town where villagers are gathered outside a cabin where Alicia is hiding with Luna. They urge her to come out, expressing their disdain for heroes, claiming they misuse the people's taxes to fund their gear, yet fail to accomplish anything of real value for society. Phil is about to set the cabin on fire, but Pete intervenes and their father Mark advises against it, reminding them that their ancestors constructed it 200 years ago. Phil insists that they need to punish Alicia, but Mark strikes him and warns him not to heed outsiders. He mentions that they have people monitoring Maynard and Nay to prevent any trouble, and he instructs Phil to step back while he handles Alicia. Mark approaches the cabin and introduces himself as the head of the town guard, telling Alicia that he wishes to speak with her. He assures her that he won't harm her friends. Consequently, she tells Nell to wait for her and steps outside to converse with him. She confesses that she is a hero, but explains that she lost her regalia when she dropped it during her battle with Clevatess. Mark realizes that she fought him and lost, and she mentions that the heroes were no match for him, so she can understand why everyone hates them. But Mark tells her it's okay because she lost her regalia fighting Clevatess, and he notes that their king sent her off because of their tradition. She's surprised that he doesn't hate her, and he asks her if it's worth continuing their tradition because he knows that she saw what was beyond the Luna Mountain. She recalls that when Clevatess blew her away, she saw the world from above, so she realized how massive it is. She tells Mark it's worth continuing their tradition because there's much to learn of the world, so they should take risks to explore it. She mentions that countless heroes have already died fighting the dark beasts, so they should honor them by making the world a bigger place. Mark tells her she deserves to be a hero and decides to let her go, telling her they need their next king to give it his all. So she thinks he knows that Luna has royal blood. He prepares to leave with the others, but Maynard suddenly arrives with his giant bug, which cuts Mark down. Maynard explains that he's angry because he wanted to see the people burn Alicia, but she suddenly slices up the giant bug, so he summons a swarm of insects. The people hide in the cabin while Alicia cuts down the insects, but she suddenly starts to lose strength as Maynard tells her to look out for the little ones because they're all poisonous. A spider bites her and he reveals that its poison will destroy her blood, so she's worried that it might work on her dark Ecker. He reveals that he used to love heroes, but he now hates them because they didn't save him when he lost everything as his house burned down. He orders his insects to attack her again and she struggles to defend herself. But Clevatess suddenly appears, telling her to finish the fight since she still has a job to do. The people in the cabin realize that the insects are getting in through the gaps, so they start crushing them as Carrie mentions that they must protect Luna because he's the country's future. Maynard taunts Alicia as she struggles to defeat the insects and he summons a giant scorpion which starts attacking her. She falls into a river and Clevatess realizes that the poison is slowing her down, telling her it isn't strong enough to destroy her dark ichor, but it will stop her body from regenerating. The men in the cabin use planks to cover the gaps in the wall, but they suddenly hear a strange sound and they realize that giant larvae are eating the roof. Maynard informs Alicia that the larvae emerge once every 100 years, consuming all the trees on their island before waiting another century for the trees to regenerate. He mentions that he can utilize his magic to accelerate this cycle, meaning the cabin will survive even a minute and the occupants will be killed by his insects. Suddenly, Alicia leaps out of the water, only to see enormous moths emerging from their cocoons, launching an attack on her. She attempts to fend them off, but the dust from their wings leaves her feeling lightheaded, and a scorpion knocks her to the ground. The insects bury her alive, but then the stream splitter appears, and Clevatess informs her that the insects are composed of water, allowing her to use the regalia to cut them apart. As she seizes it, the insects are instantly blown away, and she quickly rises back to her feet. She wields the regalia to eliminate the insects surrounding her, triggering a chain reaction that eradicates the bugs in the forest. Maynard's scorpion detonates and he gets caught in the blast while Nay observes from afar, realizing that all of his insects have been annihilated. The people inside the cabin are in awe, hailing Alicia as a true hero. She threatens Maynard with her sword, but he stands firm and refuses to yield, prompting her to knock him out. However, she suddenly collapses. Clevatess catches her just before she falls, astonished that she struggled against such a weak opponent. He notes that circumstances have changed, so he must call her back. She inquires about Drell, and Clevatess informs her that he was unable to defeat him because another Lord of the Dark Beasts seems to be aiding him. In Haydn, we encounter the Crown Princess Tala, who discovers that 80% of the survivors have been moved to the underground bunkers. However, she instructs her soldiers to keep searching for any remaining survivors, believing that her son Hyderius VI might have survived the attack. An elder advises her to find a safe place, as she is the only one capable of ruling Haydn now that the king has died. Yet she insists that she will not leave until she locates her son. She recalls seeing the forge after the king's death and realizes it is still operational, indicating that someone of royal lineage is still alive. She suspects it is not inactive because Hyderius survived the assault, explaining that he is the only one who can operate the forge. Therefore, they must locate him at all costs. She also shares that she had a vision of the capital's destruction, as their heroes lacked the strength to overcome the dark beasts. So she wanted to leave with Hyderius before it happened, but their trip was delayed because of her duties. A soldier named Fabio reports that the Eslan army clashed with Drell's forces, but they were no match for his magic. Fabio adds that after their battle, Clevatess suddenly appeared and he wiped out half of Drell's army, but Drell suddenly used his magic to trap Clevatess, and he's now approaching the capital with his men. Tala can't believe he was able to capture Clevatess, because no one has defeated one of the lords of the dark beasts for over 1,000 years, and she notes that it goes against their tradition because he isn't even a hero. Fabio notes that he has a regalia, but she refuses to acknowledge him as a hero because he's an enemy of their nation. She tells Fabio to prepare her armor, telling him it's her duty to destroy Drell's regalia as a member of the royal family, but Fabio thinks it's impossible, so she explains that she has the Hammer of the Kings, which is the only thing that can create and destroy a regalia. She prepares for battle, telling everyone they'll fight Drell's army in the city, and he suddenly blasts through the wall as he enters the capital with his men. We see Phil giving Nay to Alicia, who tells him to find Nell, so he leaves to look for her. Nay asks Alicia what she wants, telling her she wants to go home, and Alicia wonders how the villagers were able to capture her since she has the power of magnetism. So she reveals that they didn't use weapons against her, explaining that her gourds were easily defeated, and she's no match for people who fight with only their muscles. Alicia asks her if Drell works with one of the lords of the dark beasts, but Nay doesn't know what she's talking about. So Alicia wonders if she has seen his dark acre. She mentions that his blood escapes from his body and moves independently. Nay finds this absurd, but Clevatess clarifies that Drell utilized it, indicating that only a lord of the dark beasts has the power to create it. Therefore, he believes he must eliminate the lord who is troubling him and discloses that Drell merely ensnared his shadow, thinking it wise to let Drell assume he has triumphed over him to prevent further pursuit. Clevatess observes that defeating Drell alone isn't sufficient, as he also needs to identify the lord he serves. However, Nay cuts in, stating that she has no clue what he means. She points out that their objective is to seize the hidden royal forge and emphasizes that they require the prince to operate it. So she made the choice to remain there in search of him, but she feels it's time to depart, and she takes off her gauntlets to free herself, exposing her surprisingly slender arms. She employs her magic to soar away with her gauntlets and spots Nell and Luna riding in a cart, noting that its wheels are crafted from iron. Using her gauntlets, she knocks down the brothers and mentions that she would be reprimanded if she returns without anything, so she opts to take Nell and Luna along with her. She ascends with the cart, but is taken aback to find Clevatess present as well. Alicia discloses that they set a trap for her, intending for her to lead them to Drell. Alicia observes that her regalia isn't composed of iron, meaning May's powers won't affect it, and she concedes defeat. Meanwhile, the villagers express their gratitude to Alicia for safeguarding them, urging her to rescue Haydn. Clevatess ponders whether Alicia feels joy for having accomplished something heroic, and Nell comments on how impressed she was, noting that Alicia resembled a legendary hero during her battle with Maynard. Nell is in disbelief that Luna is a prince, and she questions whether it's appropriate for her to touch him since she's merely a commoner. However, Clevatess argues that it doesn't make sense, asserting that a person's strength defines their social standing and insists that she is stronger than an ordinary human. He suggests that she should confront Luna's mother if she looks down on her, but Alicia intervenes, explaining that such behavior would prevent him from becoming Luna's advisor. May is puzzled about why their group is so disorganized, but Clevatess dismisses her as foolish, stating that everything is as it should be. As they near the capital, Clevatess instructs Alicia to take down Drell, clarifying that he cannot engage in battle himself because he must conceal his abilities. They witness Haydn's army battling to protect the capital, and suddenly, an explosion rocks the wall as Drell obliterates everything in his way. Tala shows up with her men, disclosing that she has equipped them with weapons nearly as formidable as a regalia, and they charge ahead, but Drell swiftly defeats them. The archers release their arrows, yet he incinerates them with his flames and annihilates the shield bearers guarding Tala. He seizes her, asserting that she will never ascend to power, to which she replies that she is already aware of that fact since she lacks royal lineage. She contemplates shattering his regalia with the king's hammer and patiently waits for the perfect opportunity, convinced that it is her only chance to prevail. Suddenly, Alicia appears, and he recognizes her as the daughter of the swordmaster he had slain, while she proclaims her intent to avenge her father. Tala notices that Drell is preoccupied, and she gets ready to destroy his regalia. However, she is suddenly blown away as Alicia engages Drell in battle. Tala is puzzled about Alicia's presence there since she was supposed to confront Clevatess. Meanwhile, Nell is uncertain if she can take down Drell. Clevatess, however, dismisses their concerns, suggesting they should search for the forge while Alicia is occupied with Drell, believing they can access it since they are accompanied by Luna. Fabio instructs his men to guard the forge, and they inform him that the crypt is unprotected. He reassures them that it doesn't matter and insists they must defend the forge at all costs. Clevatess speculates that the forge lies beyond a wall, so he commands Nell to push it, revealing that he had granted her the strength of a troll during her healing. With all her strength, she shoves the wall, sending it soaring. However, Fabio and his crew notice it, and it collides with them. Nell remarks that she'd heard someone scream, but Clevatess reassures her that it was merely her imagination and casts a spell to conceal Fabio and his men. They arrive at the forge, and Clevatess employs Luna's hand to unlock it, stating that it's time to explore the future.